إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. All praise is due to Allah, whom we turn to for help, forgiveness and guidance to the right path. And we seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our souls. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our sins. For whomsoever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomsoever is misguided, then only Allah, the Almighty, can guide him. And I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, the Almighty. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his slave and messenger. May the peace and blessings and prayers be upon him until the day of judgment. O you who believe, fear Allah as he should be feared, and die only in a state of Islam, die only as Muslims. Today, my dear brothers, we're going to continue on with our explanation of Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya. We're going to stop giving you the etiquettes of a seeker of knowledge, and we're going to move on to the actual book and author now. The actual author and book. Hopefully today we're going to give you a brief biography of this great Imam, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. If we get to finish his biography, which I hope we will move on next week to the first hadith. There's a lot of brothers and sisters are thirsty for some reason, and I thought the previous lessons were beneficial, yet many are asking for me to move on to the Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, and that's what we're here for, inshallah. That's the main aim and goal and objective, to give you those very important 40 hadiths and explain them to you in some depth. These 40 hadiths are of a huge importance and have huge meanings, and basically they tackle every field. They tackle every field in the Sharia. They've been handpicked by one of the greatest scholars in Islam, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, and they've been handpicked from thousands of hadiths, authentic hadiths that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke and gave to this ummah. So we're going to be shedding light on each and every one of those hadiths, as I said, in depth, inshallah, in the coming weeks. As for today, I've summarized here for you the biography or life of this great Imam, the author of these 40 hadiths, Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Before commenting, as I said, on the 40 hadiths, it is only proper and appropriate that we shed light on this great Imam and introduce him to you. And know, my brothers and sisters, that it is important, of extreme importance, for all students of knowledge to learn about the lives of their pious predecessors. For many reasons. And for the benefits and lessons that are to be gained when learning about their lives, so that you can emulate them and take them as your role models. It's like studying the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why do you study the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? To learn how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam led his life, how he spent it, what did he occupy and busy himself with, how he behaved towards his companions, towards his wives, towards his relatives, towards his enemies, towards animals, how he led his day-to-day life. So there's always lessons and benefits to learn from a person's life story or biography. And as I said, they're great role models for us. Their behavior and actions can have a great effect upon a person's spiritual well-being and upbringing. Their examples are a living proof in every age, which shows that there were always, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to this day and age, there will always and will always be pious people leading their lives in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah, no matter what the situation may be. No matter what the situation may be. We're going to shed a little bit of light on that because the time of Imam Nawawi is a time of turmoil. Time of turmoil. The Mongols attacked the Muslim world. The Crusaders had hold of a lot of Muslim lands. There was a lot of wars and what have you, and the Muslims were going through a pretty bad state. They were going through many tests and trials and hardships. Yet, this did not deter his great Imam from becoming what he became. These great men are a living proof that the guidance of the Quran and Sunnah was sufficient for them to live their lives in manners pleasing to Allah, even though they did not sit with the Prophet ﷺ nor his companions, even though they came many years after that. These are what? Living proofs that you don't have to be with the Prophet ﷺ or with his companions to be a pious, righteous, upright Muslim. You can be that righteous, upright, pious Muslim in any day and age. And of course, there are living proof that this ummah will always, along the lines, produce great men who will revive and reform the religion for them. They work and sacrifice and strive and struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to please Allah the Almighty, away from all worldly pleasures and materialistic lusts and desires and whims and what have you. And subhanAllah, this great Imam was a living example of that, as we are going to, bi'idhnillah, learn. Allah the Almighty, my dear brothers, points to the benefits of looking into such people's lives in the Quran, wherein He says to His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أولئك الذين هدى الله فبهداه اقتدي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, verily those who were before you from amongst the prophets and messengers, they have been guided by Allah. Follow in their path. That's a huge lesson and benefit for the Prophet ﷺ, for us. When we hear about these great scholars and the way they lived, and what they gave and sacrificed for Islam, we follow in their footsteps. We take the good that they gave, the service they done for this ummah, and we follow in their footpath. The time of Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, 631 to 676. He lived between that period of time. 656, the Mongols ravished the Muslim world, and the capital of the Muslim world, Baghdad, fell to the Mongol hordes. And the Mongols carried on to Damascus, to Syria, or Greater Syria, Sham, modern day Syria, to also attack it and overtake it. And they took the majority of it too, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala united Egypt and Sham, the two armies of Egypt and Syria, and alhamdulillah they won a very decisive battle called the Battle of Ain Jalut. Battle of Ain Jalut. It was led by Qutuz. He was the leader of the Muslim armies at that time. Very decisive battle. And after that, alhamdulillah, the Mongols tried and tried again to attack the Muslim world, to overtake the Muslim world, and they failed after that battle. That was a very decisive battle. So Imam Nawawi lived during the attack of the Mongol hordes. He lived during the time when the Crusaders had a hold of a lot of lands, until they were driven completely out of Jerusalem and modern day Palestine in 691. He lived till 676, so there was Crusaders at his time, and he witnessed the attack of the Mongols on the Muslim empire and Muslim world. But still, there was never amongst this ummah a shortage of scholars and learning during these turbulent times. And it didn't deter this great Imam from seeking knowledge and becoming one of the most prominent scholars of his time. He became one of the most prominent scholars of his time. It shows, my dear brothers, that when there's light, there's hope. When there's life, there's hope. That's an idiom they use in the West. When there's life, there's hope. When there's light, there's hope. As long as you're in good health, and Allah has blessed you to move around, give you the energy and strength, be productive. Don't laze around. Don't say, oh my God, the Muslim world is going through such and such. What am I going to do? Do your part. You don't know. Could be through you, or through your offspring, through your kids, or your kids' kids. A word you may say may have an effect on someone that may be attentive to that word. It may enter his heart, and he may become someone you never imagined. Like we mentioned to you in a previous lesson, Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. He was a young teenager sitting in the circle of Sufyan ibn Uyayna, his sheikh, and his sheikh threw a word in the lesson, during the lesson. Who will collect, or who can collect the authentic traditions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, as soon as I heard it, that word entered into my heart, and I always, from that day on, I intended on doing that. Subhanallah. And he done it in the best way, in the best form. So Sufyan ibn Uyayna had no role to play in collecting Sahih al-Bukhari. The only role he had was a word of advice to his students. And one of those students got up, mashallah, in the future and done the job. He will get all the rewards for it, without him having to travel the world like Imam al-Bukhari done. The striving and struggling and sacrifice that he put. Do your part. never remain in an inferior or have that inferior complex like many of us have. Always look at the bright side, look at the positive side. Be positive and productive in your life at all times. You don't know what Allah can do through you or through those who you may advise or those whom you may help and aid and support. And at the end of the day, if you do your part, you'll always be the winner. But if you sit around and become lazy and heedless and careless, and have that inferiority complex, that negative outlook at things, you're not going to benefit yourself nor others. And never give up. The message is never give up. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, his birth and upbringing. His name is Muhyi ad-Din. Muhyi ad-Din. Abu Zakaria, Yahya ibn Sharaf al-Huzami al-Nawawi. Let's take that, break it up. Muhyi ad-Din, that's not his real name. It was very popular with the Arabs and the customs of the Arabs. They used to give titles to certain people, famous people. And because Imam al-Nawawi became famous and popular, they gave him that title, Muhyi ad-Din, the reviver of the religion. And in reality he was a reviver or reformer of the religion because of what he done. May Allah have mercy on him. So it's a title, Muhyi ad-Din, the reviver. Even though, subhanAllah, he did not like that title and used to be upset with people who used to call him Muhyi ad-Din. The scholars have said, the reason for that is he was a modest and humble person. He didn't want, the eyes on him and the popularity and celebrity sheikh and what have you title. He didn't want that. He was modest, humble. Abu Zakaria, that's his nickname. Abu Zakaria. That's another custom and tradition and sunnah to name the person normally after his what? His eldest son. But believe it or not, Imam al-Nawawi didn't have a son. Believe it or not, Imam al-Nawawi didn't even get married. SubhanAllah. And we're going to give you the reason for that. Why he didn't get married. But Abu Zakaria stuck. Even if you don't have a child, it's sunnah to, out of honoring that person, to give him a kunya or a laqab. And that was the case with this great scholar, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Yahya ibn Sharaf, that's his real name. Yahya, the son of Sharaf. Al-Huzami is his tribe. And Nawawi is the village, or you could say, village town that he came from. The village and town that he came from. And they've shortened all that by saying Al-Imam al-Nawawi, returning him back to his origins. Returning him back to where he was born. He was born in Nawa. Nawa is a village in modern day Syria. Bilad al-Sham, called Greater Syria in the past. He was born in the year 631 Hijri. 631 Hijri, which is equivalent to 1233 Christian era. 1233. In the village of Nawa, south of Damascus. And as I said, that is why he was called a Nawawi, because it's traced back to his origins of birth. He came from a modest family His father was God-fearing and pious. His father was God-fearing and pious. Listen to what the commentators or those who wrote his biography said. They said to the point where he taught his family to avoid eating anything forbidden whatsoever. And he would work with his own hands, his father, to provide for his family. And Imam Nawawi rahimahullah took that on board to the extent that in his latter life, when he became a teacher and scholar and what have you, he didn't take money for his teaching. And he would rely upon what his dad would send him, because he knew it was 100% halal. Subhanallah. Look at the God-fearingness in these people. So he did not want, and he would reject a lot of the gifts given by the rulers and by other people who he had suspicion of that their money wasn't fully halal. That's how God-fearing he was. That's how God-fearing he was. That's practicing what we call al-wara', God-fearingness. Imam al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah said about this, التقوى دفعت المتقين ليتركوا كثيرا من الحلال مخافة الحرام. Subhanallah. Taqwa, God-fearingness, drove or persisted with the pious until he pushed them to leave a lot of that which is halal for fear of falling into the unlawful. Look at that, subhanallah. Look how the pious predecessors used to think. Who implements that today, my dear brothers and sisters? Any money that comes, Bismillah, take it, eat it, spend it. Wherever it comes from, wherever it's given from, whoever it's given by. Imam al-Nawawi, no. He did not want a spoonful of haram to enter his body. And of course, his dad was the role model in that. It's been narrated that his dad used to tell them that if you want your du'as accepted, then don't enter your bodies anything except that is halal. And he used to quote the hadith for them, popular hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when the Prophet mentions a person who travels a long distance and he's dirty and dusty, lifts his hands up, calls on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. But his food is unlawful, and his drink is unlawful, and his clothing is unlawful, and he is nourished with the unlawful. How is it that Allah is going to answer your dua? That's why the scholars derive from this hadith, if you want to be a person whom Allah answers your dua, then make sure what? You have halal earnings, you have halal money. You want to be amongst those whom Allah answers your dua. His early upbringing, educational upbringing from his young and early days, Imam al-Nawawi focused and concentrated on his studies. His very early days, he embarked and occupied himself with the study. And subhanallah, he set an unbelievable example of that. He kept away from all amusement, from all play, with the kids. They used to try him and mock him and belittle him, that he was odd, was not normal. He never used to like playing. He never used to like to waste his time. So at a very early age, he memorized the Quran. At a very early age, he memorized the Quran. And this is what we should be encouraging our kids and our children. This is one of the benefits of studying the life stories of these great scholars. We should be encouraging our kids and children. There's no harm in giving them every now and then space and time for recreation. But unfortunately today, I've witnessed with many families, their kids are on PlayStation, games, day and night. That's not good at all for their upbringing. And if you want your kid to, inshallah, be something and someone in this Muslim world and to do something for this Muslim ummah, you don't want him to be brought up on PlayStation and toys and games and what have you and what have you. You want him to be a man. You want him in the future to step up and benefit this ummah. Be a benefit to you and of benefit to this ummah. At the ripe age of 19, it was said at times at the age of 18 that he went to Damascus to study the Shafi'i fiqh, in which he excelled in memorizing some of its most important texts. At the age of 18, he memorized tens and tens of Shafi'i texts, Islamic jurisprudence. And his pursuit of knowledge did not stop there. He had such a thirst for knowledge that he was attending 12 lectures a day. No, I didn't get it wrong. How many lectures? 12 lectures a day. With different scholars, prominent scholars of his time. And each lecture was on a different subject. Tafsir, hadith, usul al-fiqh, the Arabic language, fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, and the many other subjects that warrants a person to study to become a scholar. Today, many of us attend one lecture probably a week, and we'll come out and, mashallah, I've done something great. I've done something great. Or I may become a scholar. Come on. This one lecture a week. But subhanallah, look at the effort and time that this great man put in. And he's taken the advice of his pious predecessors before him, who used to say, لا ينال العلم بالراحة. Knowledge is not gained by being lazy. By being lazy. من طلب العوالي سهر الليالي. He who seeks prominence, the high positions, high status in the community, knowledge-wise, what does he do? He stays up the nights, striving and struggling. Striving and struggling. He studied these subjects, as I said, under very well-known scholars, qualified and trustworthy. credible and reliable scholars such as Ishaq ibn Ahmad al-Maqdisi, Abdul Rahman al-Ambari, Abdul Aziz al-Ansari, Ibrahim al-Wasiti. Ibrahim al-Wasiti, whom he studied Sahih Muslim. Imam Nawawi has a commentary on Sahih Muslim, which is probably the best commentary on that book. He studied that book under this great scholar Ibrahim al-Wasiti. At the ripe age of 24, believe it or not, he becomes a scholar. The ripe age of 24, he excelled and surpassed his peers, and he began to teach at Al-Ashrafiyya school, very famous Islamic school in Damascus, in Syria, or Greater Syria back then. It was a very famous school, Islamic school. And he was recognized as a reputable scholar by the scholars and the inhabitants of Damascus. His pursuit of knowledge dominated his entire life. He would put all his time in studying, learning, memorizing, and writing. He would sleep very little. He would sleep very little. In fact, it has been narrated that he would not sleep until sleep overtook him. Until sleep overtook him, and he had a book in his hand all the time. He had a book in his hand. What is amazing with this, came across narrations that, more than one narration about him, that he actually, for 2 years, did not sleep on a bed. He slept sitting down. He had his back to the wall or to a pillar or what have you, and he's reading, and then he would sleep. That's how his sleep was. For 2 years, that's how he slept. Rahimahullah. His living conditions or way of life. He led a life of no comforts and luxuries. Ascetic. He was very ascetic. Very plain and simple. He led a modest life. He didn't desire any of the pleasures of this world. All he possessed, this is something also that will shock you, in his life, all he possessed was a turban and a gown, long gown, and a abaya like this. That's all he possessed. Subhanallah. And he would eat very simple food. He would eat very simple food. In some narrations, his father would send him olives, and bread. That's what he would eat. Sometimes dried bread. Sometimes bread he'd put in water because it's dried, to soften it and eat it. Look at the simplicity, subhanAllah, in his life. And as I said, he would at times refuse permissible things out of fear of falling into the unlawful or doubtful matters, if it came from suspicious sources. He wouldn't accept from anyone, only from those whom he knew perfectly, and or from his father. He was well known for his modesty and humility, to the point where he wouldn't allow anyone to serve him. That was a character of his, or a quality of his, that he wouldn't allow anyone to serve him. Even his students, he would serve them. Even his students, he would serve them. May Allah have mercy on him. He would fast on a constant basis and dedicate all his time to work and worship instead of the pleasures of this life. In some narrations, it was narrated they used to fast every day, except for Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. Every day. Even though that is not in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And we always prefer and put above anything and everyone and anyone the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That practice goes against the best fast is the fast of Dawood alayhi salam. Best fast is the fast of Dawood. He used to fast one day and break his fast the next. That's the best fast. Hatta when Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As asked the Prophet ﷺ that he wants to do better than that, he said there's nothing better than that. That's the best fast. Don't go further than that. But also with reading the Quran, some of the pious predecessors used to read it in a day, 2 days and what have you. The Sunnah is not to read it below 3 days. And like that. One material possession that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah did have was what? Pen? Well, definitely had a pen because he used to write. We're going to come to that, his writings. He definitely had books. Had a lot of books. He had a lot of books to the point where it was narrated that if someone used to visit him, he only had a small room as his living quarters. There would be no space for the person to sit down. They'd have to pile the books up high till they could find space to sit down. So he was encompassed with all his books. But of course, he collected those books to benefit from, not for show, and to decorate his house or his room, to benefit from. And subhanAllah, did he benefit? Definitely yes, he benefited immensely from those books, because later on he became one of the most prominent authors and one of the most prominent Shafi'i scholars of his time. Some of the books he produced for this ummah till this day remain some of the best, most authentic of books till this day. An-Nawawi rahimahullah, as we said, never married. Never married. He was one of the famous scholars that never married. Like Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari was a famous tafsir scholar, the greatest tafsir scholar. He never got married. Who else didn't get married? It was one of the great scholars, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Never got married. Sayyid Qutb, rahimahullah, never got married. And there's a fair few that did not get married. They basically preferred knowledge above marriage and didn't have time to get married, or didn't have the means. They were filled with the desire to learn and teach and write. And or they didn't get married because they feared of not living up to the responsibilities of marriage, physically, financially, and emotionally. But with all respect to these scholars, again, we say, or I say, implementing the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is preferable without a doubt. For you who are married, can you live without getting married? Without having a wife? It's only a natural phenomena. Natural instinct for a man to lean towards a woman and to get married and fulfill his sexual desires and what have you. But subhanallah, these great scholars, for one reason or another, they didn't get married. They didn't get married. If you were given the choice, you want to seek knowledge or never get married? Seek knowledge without getting ever married. What choice would you take? As I said, the sunnah is above the practices of some of our great scholars. May Allah have mercy on them all. And we've come to a very important issue and topic now. It is Nawawi's beliefs and creed and aqeedah. In general, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is on the aqeedah of As-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Is on the aqeedah of As-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But he does at times lean towards the Ash'ari creed. Lean towards the Ash'ari creed. No, my dear brothers and sisters, that the correct and only true and pure form of Islam is that of the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and understanding that the Prophet conveyed to his companions, whom the pious predecessors followed. Whom the pious predecessors followed. As proven in many verses of the Quran and hadith, authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the standard by which we judge others. This is a standard by which we judge others. If something is correct in accordance with this standard, then it is to be accepted regardless of who says it. Regardless of who says it, whom it comes from. The truth is the truth. It should be accepted from anyone. And if something is incorrect according to this standard, then it's to be rejected, regardless of who says it. Regardless of who says it. Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. Aynama wajadaha akhadha biha. Meaning, the truth is a believer's aim and objective and goal. Aynama wajadaha. Wherever he finds it, he takes it. He what? He takes it. With this methodology in place, a person should not be confused concerning the issues of how to deal with scholars. This is a very important issue, so pay attention. A person should not be confused concerning the issue of how to deal with scholars that had wrong views on some matters related to faith and belief, related to aqeedah. These scholars are not infallible. These scholars are what? Not infallible. Meaning, they make mistakes. The only infallible person is who? Is who? The Prophet ﷺ. No one else. But their mistakes are forgiven due to their ijtihad. They're striving and exerting themselves to come to the correct opinion. In fact, not only are their mistakes forgiven, they are rewarded. This may surprise you, but that's the fact. That's what the Prophet ﷺ teaches. That's what our religion teaches. They are rewarded for this, as the Prophet ﷺ says in the authentic hadith, إذا حكم الحاكم فاجتهد فأصاب فله أجر، وإذا اجتهد فأخطأ فله أجر. So if a judge comes to a decision, exerting himself to come to the correct opinion, and he speaks out with the correct opinion, he has 2 rewards. And if he exerts himself to come to a decision, if he makes a decision and exerts himself and strives to come to the correct opinion, but he errs, he makes a mistake, then what? He has 1 reward. And that applies whether to Aqidah issues or to fiqh issues. It applies to any issue in the religion. And Imam Nawawi rahimahullah was a mujtahid. Was a mujtahid. So if he erred in this field, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pardon and forgive him, then he will receive a reward for that mistake, or for that opinion that he came up with. For that opinion that he came up with. And there's a famous, you could say, idiom in the Arabic language, which states, اعرف الحق تعرف الرجال الرجال لا يعرفون بالحق. Know the truth, you will know the qualities of men. You will know men in their true essence. But the truth is not known by men, or not represented by men. Why? Because anyone, as I said, below the Prophet ﷺ can make mistakes. As Imam Malik rahimahullah said, everyone will have some of his sayings accepted and some rejected, except the Prophet ﷺ. He's the only person that you cannot reject his saying, because he's infallible. Anyone below the Prophet ﷺ, from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to Umar al-Faruq to Uthman al-Nurayn to Ali to the Tabi'een, all the way up to Imam al-Nawawi, Ibn Taymiyyah and the rest, you may agree with them on certain issues and you may reject or disagree with them on certain issues. And that's what's happened with Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'ah. That's what's happened with Al-Imam al-Nawawi on this issue of Aqidah. On this issue of Aqidah. We're going to shed a little bit more light on that, but before that, there's a beautiful saying by one of the great pious predecessors, Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad rahimahullah. And this could be a light for you to put in front of yourselves, and as a form of guidance for you during your life and throughout your life and for the rest of your life. And that saying is, my dear brothers, اسلك طريق الحق ولا يحزنك قلة السالكين. And in some narrations, ولا يغرك قلة السالكين. اسلك, take the path of that which is true, the truthful path. Take the truthful path, and do not be saddened or do not be deceived by the small numbers on that path. ولا تسلك طريق الباطل ولا يغرك كثرة الهالكين. And do not take the path of falsehood or accept falsehood, and do not be deceived by the great amount or numbers that are going to be destroyed. And that, subhanAllah, these beautiful words are in accordance with the teachings of the Quran, the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His holy book, وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. The majority of people, even if you are determined to guide them, will not be or will not become believers. وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Very few of my slaves are those who show gratitude. وَإِن تَتَّبِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you follow the majority of people on earth, they will misguide you. They'll take you away from the right path. But this issue of majority, our religion teaches the total opposite of that. The majority, as Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu used to say, al-jama'a al-haq walau kunta wahdak. The majority is the truth, even if you are by yourself. Even if you are by yourself. And didn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that my ummah will be cut up into 73 sects? All of them, where? In paradise? In the hellfire, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. You seek refuge in Allah from the hellfire. All of them in the hellfire, except one. That which I am upon today and my companions. And my companions. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, لا تزال طائفة من أمتي على الحق ظاهرين. A group of my ummah. There will always remain a group of my ummah. Referring to a small number. A group of my ummah upon the truth. There will be apparent, known, but they are small in number. For those who boast about majority and numbers and what have you, they've got the wrong mentality, my dear brothers, unfortunately. And you fear for such people. Wallahi, you fear for such people that they are on the wrong path. Because it doesn't match up with the teachings of what the Prophet ﷺ, what the Quran and what the Prophet ﷺ taught and teach. And this is not a proof when a person tells you the majority of scholars or the majority of people are on this opinion. When was that ever a proof? Is that one of the main sources of our religion? The main source of our religion, my dear brothers, is the Quran and the Sunnah. He who conforms with the Quran and the Sunnah has conformed and affirmed the truth. He who goes against the Quran and the Sunnah, even if it's 99% of the Ummah, then they're on falsehood. It's as simple and as clear as that. Yes, in some of Imam Nawawi's writings, there are words or beliefs that go against the beliefs of the Salaf, the pious predecessors. And that's our stand towards him and towards others before him or after him. Anyone who comes with a mistake, with something which is a wrong, with an error, we reject it. No matter whom that person is. Whether it's this great Imam, Al-Imam Nawawi, and or Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and or Al-Imam al-Shafi'i, or Malik, or Abu Hanifa, or Imam Ahmad, Imam As-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, or any of the great scholars amongst the Tabi'een, or Atba' al-Tabi'een, or any of the great scholars that live in our era today. The shame is not, the shame on you is not rejecting these great scholars. The shame on you is accepting their falsehood or their wrong. That's the real shame. Ibn al-Attar, rahimahullah, one of the great students of Imam al-Nawawi, went against his shaykh. This is a direct student of Imam al-Nawawi. Went against his shaykh in his creed and wrote a book called Al-I'tiqad al-Khalis min al-Shakk wal-Intiqad, the belief that is free of any form of doubt and criticism. He's one of Imam al-Nawawi's direct students who went against his own shaykh and wrote a book confirming or affirming what the pious predecessors affirmed concerning the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, subhanallah, with some of the scholars that went wrong or erred on the issue of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were confused. They were in a bit of a turmoil. They were confused. Sometimes they would affirm the attribute. Look at that. Sometimes they would affirm the attribute. Sometimes they would misinterpret and twist the meaning of the attribute. Sometimes they would say its meaning is left to Allah, which they used to call tafweed. The first one, or the second one, they used to call ta'weed. Look at that. Which one? What madhab are you on? Are you on affirming the attribute? Or are you on denying the attribute? Or are you on twisting and misinterpreting the meaning of the attribute? Or are you on leaving it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no one knows its meaning? Well, that's what he was upon at times. Sometimes he would affirm the attribute, and that's in accordance with the manhaj, the methodology of the Salaf, the pious predecessors. Sometimes he would misinterpret the attribute or say its meaning is left to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the manhaj of the Ash'ari. And sometimes he would reject the attribute, and that's the manhaj of the Jahmiyyah, a deviant sect of the past. So he wasn't, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him, he wasn't a pure and staunch Ash'ari, but he definitely was influenced by them. He definitely was influenced by them. May Allah, the Almighty, have mercy on him and forgive him. Our stance on this issue, this is very important also. Our stance on this issue is to stay away from the two extremes. Is to what? Is to stay away from the two extremes. What are the two extremes? They're the following. Some, unfortunately, call Al-Imam al-Nawawi and the likes a heretic, wal-'iyadhu billah, and burn his books. And some This is one extreme. The other extreme, they follow and take what he said, even if it goes against the Quran and Sunnah and understanding of the companions and pious predecessors. These are the two extremes. We take the moderate path, and that is what I have said and explained earlier to you. He is a mujtahid, rahimahullah, and will be forgiven for his mistakes. In fact, he will receive a reward for it, bi'idhnillah. But we do not, I repeat, we do not follow him in his mistakes. We accept the truth from him and reject the wrong and falsehood, asking Allah the Almighty to pardon and forgive him and have mercy on him for the many excellent and good works and service he has given and provided this ummah with. And his good works override his errors and mistakes. His good works override his errors and mistakes. In fact, you can easily say that the little errors that he has made, or the small errors that he has made, is immersed in the great works and great good that he has given this ummah. That he has given this ummah. He served Islam and the Sharia excellently and had a huge and positive input. May Allah the Almighty have mercy on him. His school of fiqh, he was a follower of the Shafi'i school of thought. In fact, he was one of the greatest. He was one of the greatest Shafi'i scholars to have ever lived. And his writings and the books that he authored in the Shafi'i madhab are a living proof for that. Are a living proof for that, to the point where some have said that his book, Al-Majmu' is one of the greatest fiqh books in Islam till this day. Till this day. So he was a great faqih, he was a great jurist. He was not a blind follower. He was not a blind follower of the madhab. And at times he would go against the madhab if he found the proofs to be stronger and the authentic hadith to go against the madhab. So he, rahimahullah, Allah have mercy on him, did not blind follow the madhab. If he found that the hadith was stronger and he took the advice of his Imam, and Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, who used to say, if the hadith is authentic, then that is my madhab. If the hadith is authentic, then that is my madhab. He took that on board, and you can find it in his writings. He would at times refute some of the Shafi'i scholars and put the view of where the stronger opinion, where the proof, where the authentic hadith was in front of them, and correct it, or make it the correct opinion on the issue. Make it the correct opinion, or give it preference from amongst the many opinions in the Shafi'i madhab. His writings, in a span of 12 to 13 years, he wrote numerous books. He wrote numerous books. Some say over 40 books. Some say over 40 books. His most famous of books are Al-Majmu', which is printed today in about 20 volumes. Riyadh al-Salihin, that's another very famous book of his, which has been widely accepted around the Muslim world. His book, Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, another very important and prominent book. His book, Minhaj, Al-Minhaj, fi Sharhi Sahih Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, a magnificent book of approximately also close to 20 volumes, explaining the hadiths in Sahih Muslim, and many other books. So he had numerous books which he gave and left behind for this ummah to benefit from. So these books, as I said, were accepted, highly accepted and appreciated worldwide. One amazing thing is, subhanallah, because he died at a very early age, rahimahullah. He died at 45, when he was only 45 years of age. And he started writing only before that by about 13 years, 12 years, according to his biography. The amount of books that he wrote, the numerous books that he wrote, there's so many volumes that he wrote, and it really bamboozled a lot of scholars and said, subhanallah, Allah put so much barakah in this person's life that in reality, for anyone to write those books that he wrote, they needed at least twice or 3 times the amount of time that he wrote him in. He wrote him in 13 years. They needed, at least 30, 40 years to be written. They said Allah blessed his time and put barakah in his time and blessed his efforts and works. Why? Because of his sincerity. The key, my dear brothers and sisters, to success in this life is sincerity. Being sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being sincere to your religion. Being sincere in what you do. Sincerity. We're going to learn more about sincerity with the first hadith in his book, Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, which he started his book with. He had clarity of expression, and he had an easy style of writing. May Allah the Almighty have mercy on him. His students, he had many students who benefited from him, the likes of Ibn al-Attar, Ibn Jama'ah, Jamal al-Din al-Mizzi, and others who were scholars themselves within their own rights. These 3 students of his, al-Mizzi and Ibn Jama'ah and Ibn al-Attar, were some of the biggest scholars, prominent scholars of their time. And there's no being shocked or amazed at that, because look at their teacher. Look at their teacher. Usually good, strong, dedicated, sincere teachers produce good, strong students. Good, strong students. His bravery and sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He, rahimahullah, did not accept to remain silent in the presence of any evil, no matter who or what the source, whether it was rulers or scholars or the general public. He understood well the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." He understood well the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "He who sees an evil should change it, if he is capable of, with his hands. If not, then with his tongue. If not, then with his heart." And that is the weakest of faith. And he understood well the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَن نَقُولَ الْحَقَّ أَيْنَمَا كُنَّا لَا نَخَافُ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. And that we should speak out the truth wherever we are, and we should not be bothered, influenced, affected by the blame of those who are blameworthy. And of course, ad-din al-nasiha. Religion is advice. He would use soft speech and convincing arguments from the Quran and Sunnah to try and change the wrong. If that did not work, he would take a harsher stance, a harsher approach, and try and correct the wrong that appeared around him. May Allah have mercy on him.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Okay, my dear brothers and sisters, we still have one more topic, one more issue to cover, and we're going to do it because we want to move on to, inshallah, next week, the explanation of the 40 Nawawi hadiths, starting with the first hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. We're left with his death, Imam al-Nawawi's death. He, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him, died in his hometown of Nawa in the year 676 at an age of 45. The Shaykh, this great scholar, this Imam, rahimahullah, reached the top in 3 fields or in 3 areas. In knowledge, in asceticism, and in enjoining what is good and forbidding what is evil. His accomplishments in his short life of 45 years were equal to or greater than many who lived even twice as long as he did. May Allah the Almighty reward him greatly for his efforts and forgive him and have mercy on him and raise his ranks in paradise. We finish Imam al-Nawawi's biography today, and inshallah, as I promised you, bi'idhnillah, from next week on we'll be starting with the first hadith in that great book of his, Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyyah. What we're going to try and do in our coming lessons is to try and finish 1 hadith a week. 1 hadith a week, inshallah. So the topic will remain on one particular issue and matter, and it won't confuse you. If we take more than 1 hadith, it's going to be 2 topics or 3 topics sometimes. So we'll try and maintain 1 hadith at a time, 1 topic at a time, so that you may understand the hadith from every perspective. Bi-idhnillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.